Now let's analyze the houses of the Vedic astrology chart. There you have the blank chart. It applies to all ascendants. Let's analyze how these houses play out in relation to your bodily functions, the attributes which it is responsible so far as functions are concerned. Because unless we know the basics of which house is which body part, before we get into the Vata, Pitta, Kapha analysis part of it, we need to understand the bodily functions, obviously. So let us begin with the first house. What does first house stand for? The entire body, actually. The first house is your entire bodily function. So it covers everything, entire physiology, you might say. Okay? That's the first house. To summarize, there's the summary, and we shall cover this in detail when we come to Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So the first house stands for psyche, your inherent psyche, your physiology, the entire body physiology, your constitution, your entire body constitution, your complexion, the facial and the bodily complexion, vitality, longevity, strength, your physical strength, vigor, appearance, your body itself, your complexion, we covered that, constitution, intuition, yes, because it's the brain, the skull, the forehead, the pituitary gland, and all associated hormones of the pituitary gland, and frontal cortex. Now, why I say this? I have done some deep research on this. This is all based on deep research, okay? So, what I mean in every house you will see this is there will be a corresponding brain or part of brain function or part of brain stem, etc., associated hormones, etc., covering each and every house. Why? Because the first house essentially stands for skull, therefore brain. Therefore, all the regulatory functions that the brain carries out from its different parts as responsible for the remaining parts of the body, because of all the 12 houses of the Vedic astrology chart are about different kinds of functions in the body. Okay? You will see this as we go along, so you will get it by the time we reach the 12th house. So the first house, to recap, psyche, physiology, constitution, vitality, longevity, intuition, brain, skull, forehead, pituitary gland, and all associated hormones, as well as frontal cortex. Now, if you want to do medical research, you can do it by yourself using AI and whatever. Let us take the case of second house now. The second house is this particular one highlighted. It is face and facial features. It is your perception. It is the way you see things. It is the way you eat. It is your food. It is the quality of your speech. It is drinks. It is eyesight. It is face and throat. It is mouth. It is ears. It is eyes. It is smell. It is taste. All the five senses are here, isn't it? Your most dominant ones. The skin is, of course, the entire body. So, for the time being, just ignore the skin. Sensory attributes, all five senses. The mouth, the tongue, teeth, vocal cords, the thyroid and the parathyroid glands, which are in the throat, also will be common to the third house, you might say, and the associated hormones. The brain areas in this case for the second house will be Broca's area, Wernicke's area, the arcuate fasciculus, you can research this by yourself, the primary motor cortex. It's all responsible from the second house. How this shall play out in terms of Ayurvedic terms, we shall see a little later on. Let's see the third house and how it plays out. The third house is your physical strength, your sense of valor, courage. It's basically your arms and your throat put together, you might say. Arms and hands. Your sexual activity, the beginnings of the sexual activity also is denoted in the third house. Your ears and hearing, okay, your communication ability, your shoulders, shoulder blades, hearing, neck, fingers, palms of your hand, your collarbones, your reflex capacity, reflexes, the cerebellum, in terms of brain again now, the angular gyrus, the supramarginal gyrus, the primary auditory cortex, the basal ganglia, and the cerebellum. These are all the physical attributes of the third house and the brain functions or areas of the brain which are responsible for your third house coordination. This is why ascendant end becomes very strong. We shall see this later on when we come to the Vata, Pitta, Kapha analysis. You will see how this plays out. It's very strong, it's very deep. So we shall see that. The fourth house, that's the one highlighted there, stands in terms of your physical bodily functions as chest and lungs area, emotions, happiness, your mind, the psychology of the mind, the psychosis factors of all kinds, the rib cage, your feelings, breasts, heart, upper spine, peace of mind, water retention capacity, the thymus gland in terms of glandular function and associated hormones, the medulla oblongata, these are all brain parts which are responsible for the fourth house, pons, hypothalamus, cerebral cortex, limbic system, the vagus nerve, and the nucleus of solitary tract and reticular formation. Now, all these brain parts, I leave it to all you wonderful people. Use it to research it more, okay? Because these are the parts which are associated with chest, lungs, emotion, psychology, all the fourth house aspects. So you got to correlate here. And we shall see this more as we go along. Next, if we take the fifth house, your stomach area, the digestive system, liver, your creative intelligence, your memory, your stomach, your lower heart area, everything below the rib cage, okay? Liver, gallbladder, spleen, the central abdomen, digestion, reproductive hormones, the central spine, the pancreas, the gastrin, the pepsinogen, and bile. These are the areas of the fifth house. Talk about sixth house now. We come to the sixth house area. Intestines. You keep going from top down. Okay, we are going from top down. Sixth house is everything below the navel. Small intestines, acute diseases, hygiene, critical thoughts, spleen, lower waist level, mid-lower back, lower spine area, immune system, the adrenal glands. See there, adrenaline comes from there. Your stress hormones comes from there, adrenal glands, and associated hormones like the cortisol, which is very popular these days in the stress management area. That's this area, the red and the pink highlighted chakras over there. Okay, that's the sixth house. You can revisit this any number of times. The seventh house now, which is responsible for your sexual function, your libido, your sexual habits, your sexual drive, your external sexual organs like the vagina, like the penis, like the sexual preferences. Also, we are talking everything between pink dot there and the yellow dot. So we are talking going towards the root chakra now. So sexual preferences, large intestine, the pelvis organs, the lower back, the kidneys, the gonad hormones, estrogen and testosterone. So that's the responsible area. Your seventh house, whatever is sitting there, in terms of Ayurvedic principles, we shall see a bit later on. Right now, we are just going through the core functions of every house. Remember this. Planets will come much later on. Let's first see the house functions. Then, next comes the eighth house. What happens to the eighth house? That one. It's the excretory system. Now we come to the root chakra. So excretory system, obviously, the end of the long intestines, the colon area, longevity, internal sexual organs. These are not external now. Colon area, the anal area, testis and ovaries. We are talking about the internal uterus, prostate glands, urinary tract, sudden illnesses related to them, Undiagnosable illnesses. 8th house typically stands for chronic diseases of all kinds, especially if it's Saturn involved. Terminal sickness, toxicity held in the body. Why? Because this is the excretory organ. If the toxicity which is generated in the system is not pushed out regularly, it leads to toxicity, accumulation of toxins in the body. Therefore, 8th house functionally is responsible for toxicity in the body. The urinary bladder, urinary tract, urinary bladder, prostate, all these organs come under the 8th house so far as astrology is concerned. The endocrine system also. Remember, in every case, there are glands scattered from top to bottom in the human body, isn't it? If you know some bit of basic biology. So that's what plays out here. The 9th house now plays out in hips area, your thighs. Now we have come descended below this. So this area, you might say. Tailbone area, the sacral region, the sciatic nerves. All sciatica people take note. Pituitary glands and associated hormones. So that's the 9th house, that house area. Speaking of it, biologically, we are trying to translate everything in terms of biology now, because this is a holistic science, Vedic astrology. Okay, so everything will tie in biologically also. The 10th house, in the same way, represents knees, lower thighs, this area, the public visibility area, knees, lower thighs, upper calves, the skeletal system, bones, skin. And in terms of the brain organ representation, it is responsible for all these things, is parathyroid glands and the associated hormones of that. Because those are the places, or those are the places in the brain, and those particular organs are responsible for this particular area. Yes, that's the 10th house. This is why this 10th house becomes important, because it is the knees. Knees stand for your own responsibility in the world. That's why they say stand on your feet. Yes. 11th house represents calves. Now you come below, right? We're coming top down. So 11th house represents calves, ankles, your circulatory system. In terms of hormonal functionality, it's hypothalamus and associated hormones. That's the 11th house. Last, the 12th house, the most scary house, right? 6, 8, 12, all astrologers go on and on about it. What does that stand for? Feet, sleep, dreams, restful state, lymphatic system, and subconscious brain. Okay, subconscious brain comes here. Fluidic releases from the body. Whatever fluidic release, you might call it urine, you might call it sweat, you might call it lymph fluids, etc., etc. All kinds of fluidic releases. We say 12th house is loss, right? But what is a loss in terms of body? It's fluidic release. It's the pineal gland, because it is sitting next to the first house. Hypothalamus and associated hormones, everything related to subconscious, amygdala, hippocampus, hypothalamus, basal ganglia, and reticular activating system. So as much as we think 12th house is unimportant, if you have planets and points here relating to Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, that will become very dominant, isn't it, when you talk of 12th house. So is first house, because first house is the ascendant. It carries over to all other parts. So in conclusion, just to wrap this up, okay, always remember these particular functions, but always remember the first house itself. Because first house, whatever is sitting there, affects the entire chart. So when you're analyzing with respect to Ayurvedic doshas, you have to bear in mind that first house planets and points, if there are planets and points, they will affect everywhere else. Because it's the governing function of the brain. The brain and parts of the brain are responsible for governing, controlling hormonal activity of the rest of the hormones. Pituitary gland is called the master gland of the body. It sits in the center of the brain. Pineal gland is there. It restores your sleep. Pineal gland is your 12th house. It's your subconscious. It's where all your Akashic records are stored. And that's how karma is actually playing out within your body. So keep all these things in mind as we go forward. Next, we shall be addressing House by house, we'll begin with, of course, the first house. Next, I shall be addressing the Vata, Pitta, Kapha imbalances in the first house and what it could show up as in terms of wellness or lack thereof. Okay? I shall see you in the next. Take care. Be safe.